I think those people deserve to know who that person was. So that then they may, if they want to, launch retrospective legal actions against MI5 and the police for so doing. So, just a bit like the Jack Jones thing, we have, first of all, we have an allegation about one type of agent, then later on we have the claim of state property class war, which I don't really believe. It says that this agent who was drinking 6 cans of special brew in the course of an interview was the person whose skills actually held the organisation together. I don't know what that would say about the rest of the members. It doesn't seem credible to me. But of course, the way this information is being used has been to imply that every time class will make a political intervention, that in fact MI5 has either increased or decreased their subsidy. That's the way Gosling is using this information, and I certainly don't think that is very truthful. So I would like to hear the truth about state operations against class war, particularly in the light of, as I would argue with the Jack Jones story, we've got 2 different versions. Now, to deal with something which one of the strongest claims that has been put forward in your defence, very strongly in this book, is the claim that you're some kind of civil libertarian, that the reason why you have actually decided to tell the truth about what went on in the security services is because you want to aid democracy and you want to reform the Official Secrets Act and so on. I have a problem with that as well, and hopefully some of you are beginning to see a recurring pattern here, because if I can just find it, the problem I have is that when it has suited you in the past, you're quite happy to trample all over people's civil liberties. We've got the case of calling for the prosecution of the old Stalinists by Melita Norwood, which you call for in Punch. But most interestingly, perhaps, because it relates to another story, if I'm just there's a former agent of MI6, Richard Tomlinson, who's still in exile in this country. And you said a number of things about Mr. Tomlinson. Some of them have been quite supportive, including in the recent book. But I'd like to draw attention to a couple that haven't been so supportive. The first is in the New Statesman on the 22nd January 2001. We say Richard Tomlinson, the sacked MI5 6 officer who is hell-bent on revenge, has had his memoirs published in the Sunday Times. It's just a shame that the man is so unreliable he could bullshit for England. So that implies a certain antagonism on your part, I think. Then in Punch, you went even further, and I think this gets to the heart of the question, or rather the answer to the question, about whether you are really a civil libertarian. You say here, you start off in Punch, this is in issue 104, on 6th of September 2000. So you've had time to reflect on what you said in January, so you've suddenly falling out over, which James Bond videos you might be watching or something. You say of Richard Tomlinson, he has never spoken out in the public interest. In fact, he has made cash from the situation by inventing information designed, I should emphasise, purely to embarrass his enemies in MI6. When the Official Secrets Act was used to prosecute him, it was used legitimately. We need secrecy legislation to protect genuine secrets. So, the point there, therefore, is that Richard Tomlinson should be prosecuted, and all he's done is invent things. Now, one of the major things that people might remember Tomlinson for is, after Princess Diana died in August 1997, he reminded people of a plot planned at MI6 how to assassinate Slobodan Milosevic, which I think it was, Serbian leader, by using flashing cameras in a tunnel. He reminded people of this, and some people thought that might well be there are similarities to the way in which Diana died in a car crash. He also pointed out, because I seem to remember the name of the chauffeur of the car, Henry Paul, as having been on a list of people who were in MI6 agents of influence, in terms of, reporting back to them, being paid money by them. So we've got a situation where Richard Tomlinson has put into play, first of all, a proposition about the chauffeur of Diana's car, and secondly, about the method by which she might have been killed. Most of which, I mean, obviously that's not a question that we can actually answer here, but most of which people might regard as interesting ideas. But in the year 2000, you didn't regard it as such. In fact, I'll just get the exact date here, so it's January 11th, 2000. Reviewing a book earlier on your case by two journalists, Holmesworth and Fielding, you said, I've praised this book, you said if you want to know about how MI5 works, etc., how MI6 conspired to murder Colonel Gaddafi, what happened in China, this is the book for you. You then said, if you want to know how MI5 murdered Princess Diana's bodyguard in the 1980s, or MI6 murdered Princess Diana herself, I suggest you stick to the kind of websites that deliver that kind of bullshit. So the argument, therefore, seems to me to be quite clear. And this review was done by somebody with the name of David Shayler. The argument seems to be quite clear that Richard Tomlinson is a bullshitter. He's never put forward anything of any use in the public domain. And anybody who thinks that MI6 had anything to do with the murder of Princess Diana is bullshit. Well, that was then. By the time of this book, or indeed by the time of the Express last year, the line had changed. In this instance, and this is very similar to what's in the book, the theories of Richard Tomlinson in the Daily Express, they were outlined and they were credited. There's no claim here that Richard Tomlinson was a bullshitter, a fantasist who made it up, and he should be prosecuted. In the book, the same Richard Tomlinson hypotheses are repeated. And the only new thing that seems to add is you mentioned that, in fact I think it's in the newspaper there, you mentioned that the involvement of somebody called Oswald or Oscar Winter, who did sort of jobs, clean-up jobs for the CIA, possibly MI6. That's what made us think there might be something to this plot. Now that is not new information. He was arrested, if I remember rightly, in 1998 for trying to sell documents to Mohammed Al-Fayed that purported to show an MI6 CIA role in the affair. So here we have a situation where your book, Animation's book, is putting forward a hypothesis about Diana having been potentially murdered, which I don't disagree that she might have been. But the information that you use is from somebody who's been dismissed as a fantasist and a bullshitter, and the only thing that you add is something that was already known even before you wrote your first article in the Express on it. This doesn't really add up, in my suggestion. Then we deal with, I don't know, we are at time. 10 minutes, right? All right, it's about the icebergs up in the northeast. And you've pointed out, and Punch pointed out, and the editor of Punch got a criminal record as a result of it, that in fact surveillance photos were taken of him visiting somebody else in Scotland who's said to be one of the leading IRA people on mainland UK at the time. And at these photos, because of some complicated system by which they went by courier, there was 12 days delay in those photos getting to London, and only when they reached London and you happened to be walking past the desk of a colleague, you happened to be walking past the desk of a colleague, did you see these photos, recognise the person, and that then made you think, and your argument was, which technically in itself I don't necessarily disagree with from your point of view, your argument was, if we'd have known about those pictures sooner, we might have been able to apprehend him and maybe those bombs might have gone off. I don't disagree with that from your point of view. However, what I find interesting is that there's another case of an IRA bombing that took place around about that time, rather closer to home, just see if I can find it here, rather closer to the MI5 headquarters, and that was a bomb that took place in January 1993, 20th of January if my memory serves me right. Now this bomb was carried out by a member and sympathiser, as well as being members of the IRA,